Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we got ourselves a track from an act named Second Choice, featuring Dimi De San, titled Where You Found Me. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen on YouTube. I should note that this is not the first time that I checked out Second Choice or Frederick's work, Frederick Lindstrom. I've also listened through other songs such as By the Black Infirm, which I believe also featured Dimi De San if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Just mentioning as well before we get into it that I'm going to be scoring this track out of 10 based on various musical criteria, but for now let's go, let's do it. What have we got? I like how lush it is immediately. Beautiful vibrato. Interesting layering decisions here as well. Interesting repetition of that line. Wow, that's a hell of a tune. There's a lot going on in there, and I think you need multiple listens to really appreciate the intricacy and nuance of it. We're going to talk about this track more, though, in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion in my review of this track from an act named Second Choice, Frederick Lindstrom, featuring Dimi De San, the song titled Where You Found Me. In this section, I'm going to provide an overall song analysis of everything from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. I should also note before we go forward that I gave this song an overall score of what I believe to be 8.1 out of 10, which I feel like is a strong score across the board. There was a lot to appreciate with this one. But before we go any further, what do we think this track is about? There are some interesting lyrics in this track. I mean, at face value, especially when we talk about not saving the person but teaching them how to live, how to sort of like find that fire, that passion, and try and find their way towards the ocean in a sense of peace. Like the mention of rooms of wasted minds and abandoned dreams, like it's not just poetic, interesting imagery that we have there. That's, you know, it's quite vivid, and it's nicer than being more literal about it. It's more interesting. I mean, like, I wore the silence like a promise is just a banger of a line there, right? Feeling the light like an empty sight. It's an interesting rhyming kind of like phrasing structure there. I like that we aren't just always rhyming the last words of the lines, you know. But I think that it's just the journey you go on with this as we figure out where we are, where they were found, and what this person's done for them. It's kind of like an acknowledgement from Dimi De San, the vocalist, where their experience, or like the protagonist in the story, it's their acknowledgement of how this person has been a part of their lives and helped them to find themselves from where they were struggling, you know, getting lost in their own thoughts, you know, unsure and unstable within their emotions, to a point where we potentially find a balance and equilibrium there. I think what sells the story so well is the wonderful vocal performance across the board. We have this kind of operatic tinge to it, the stylization that I think suits neatly with that wide vibrato that we have. The vocal range that we're in, you know, very comfortable, clearly comfortable with a hidden chest voice. In addition to like the overdubs and the overarching melodies and some of the harmonies that we have there, we explore what's possible within the track from like a lead perspective quite neatly. And just, it adds a sense of extra gravity and intensity to the piece through the way that we sing. I appreciate the emphasis and expression that we have there. It adds a sort of mysticism and otherworldliness to it, like it's larger than life. And I feel like it tells that story well, especially with some of the sort of fantasy elements there and the sort of like external things that I mentioned. I think that with a really compelling vocal performance on top, we display both a great awareness of the surrounding elements within the instrumental accompaniment, as well as what's required to keep, you know, a 3-minute song interesting throughout the entirety of it. You've just got literally everything else that spans our way through this. I'm sort of in two minds about whether this is a through composed piece or if it is a verse chorus structure. Either way, it's very pleasant to listen through. And there's a lot going on in here instrumentally with a variety of different drum, bass, piano takes. Like immediately at the start, we have everything, nearly everything in there. The full body tone of the keys playing through those quick triads there in arpeggios, with that key melody there that coalesces neatly alongside what the singer is doing. And we have the bass in the line, whether there is actually an electric bass there or if it's just the left hand of the piano there being really nicely centered for where it needs to be in the mix. It just sounds so full sounding and it catches your attention there. And the cymbal shimmers in varying other ways that we articulate the upper register in response to that is just a great sort of introduction to a few of the key components. As we move through the piece there, and we have the sound of the instruments as they kind of glide through and kind of pop out some of those notes with an interesting array of different ghost notes on the drum kit. I like the triplet feel that we have throughout this, like we're dancing through it. There's a great sense of life, and it's just great to hear the drums not just having a similar groove, but messing around with where the cymbal hits are, like speeding up in certain positions, using our quarters, eighths, and sixteenths, but also the way that we work in some of those snare drums and kicks on the syncopateds. I think we also have like a guitar in some parts, although I'm sort of 50-50 on that. Yeah, I think there is like a guitar, for example, around the 110 where there's a kind of golden glow in the center of the field there, but it's like an occasional thing. It's like we're being careful about how much of that mid-range resonance we have so as to not elicit or put forward a kind of a glow unless it's warranted. But yeah, honestly, the way that the piano develops as we go through and explores further notes as we kind of like, allow ourselves to really fill out that 3 minutes is great, with the drums picking up a pace and corresponding with chemistry to that. Even at some parts, such as around the 2-minute 20 mark, including the toms to some really kind of neat fills there. We're really exploring the drum kit and making the most of what's possible within that instrument. It's like an acknowledgement of the fact that the drums can do more than simply being like an old reliable chord note push. But I just love the kind of the underrated, like low-key nature of the guitars throughout this, unless there's some parts that I'm missing through the kind of like the second double check. It's just a relative minimalism with the note choices anyways. And to be fair, I don't think it would have necessarily suited if it had massive big strums on the guitars. It's almost like we're in the water with the music surrounding us. They're kind of awash with it. Having any harsh textures, especially with distortion, might have been a bit too kind of blunt or brutal. So yeah, ultimately, I think there's a great array of instruments there. They flesh out their respective positions in the frequency spectrum and stereo field well, especially the drums, where they kind of move around the place, and there's some interesting positioning of the bass as well, with the kind of way that some of the notes scrape and such. The vocals are clearly the focal point, with that being the main kind of line throughout a lot of it, but there's enough sort of variety with that, with the other parts that play alongside it to make it compelling. No filler, really tight instrumental performance, I think, across the board. And I think what makes the main sort of theme or hook work so well is not just the leaning of the minor, where like we sound like we're still working stuff out. So it's not like a kind of, oh, everything's better now. There's still a kind of maturity to the way that it's kind of bittersweet in a certain extent. Like, we're thankful for the fact that this person's been able to help us, but we're not completely through the woods yet, as we haven't been saved. I just like the fact that we're not going for the easy option of making it major keyed at the end when we got found there. I like the fact that it's a bit more kind of moderate, and I think that the repetition of certain vocal melodies and sequences there helps us to tie our way through the piece and help things remain connected regardless of what occurs underneath us. It's just very well thought out, a good balance of description plus anchoring, and yeah, honestly, it's just the studio recording, mixing, and mastering here. I think for the most part that's also very well presented. Generally across the board, the vocals, the keys, the guitars, bass, and drums, again, is spread around the stereo field. You can hear different cymbals and tom hits and stuff around there. Great use of panning as well to not make them too abrasive or heavy. There's a relative low end to it with the keys there, as well as the bass in certain amounts, and I dig the guitar shimmer and chin with a gentle drive on it in the mid-range, kind of filling things out. There's no resonant frequencies. The vocals do have this kind of echo and reverb and maybe some delays very occasionally there, with some great call and responses. It's just a situation where I think we also aren't overproducing the singing. Like, we can clearly sing, so we don't need help in post to make it better. It's more sort of stylization, making it more appropriate for the surrounding elements. So ultimately, there's dynamic range from both a compositional and dynamic in our production perspective, like a post-production one. Nice and loud bus compression limiting is handled, and just another really sort of positive experience with second choice in Dimi De San. No applicable constructive critique for me, and from a final general listener's perspective, I like the imagery of the earth, you know, the water, the sky and the sea, etc. And I like the lyrics. And I don't always like lyrics, but I just think there was just enough of both the duality of the environment we're in, plus the kind of elemental balance we're trying to accomplish here, to kind of have me thinking about it afterwards. It's just that everything else is the icing on the cake. So I wish everyone involved all the best in luck in future with their musical endeavors, because thank you for watching my review of this track from Second Choice, featuring Dimi De San, titled Where You Found Me, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via the various social medias and their YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next SB Reacts. Spiderhands out.